I used to babysit for a family who lived away out of town. They had a beautiful house, a couple of great kids, and a really big yard. Beyond the yard were tons of trees. It was just very, very beautiful. And for the most part, it was peaceful and very serene. There were 2 kids, a boy and a girl. They were both sweet and well-behaved. I had babysat for them for about 2 years when this happened. On the night it happened, nothing out of the ordinary happened at first. I came, the parents gave me money for their pizza, and let me know when they expected to be back. It would be really late, near to 4 o'clock in the morning. But this wasn't unusual for them. They liked to go to parties that went really late into the night. We had our pizza, watched some light TV, and I sent them to bed. It was around 11 when I heard some walking around in the upstairs. It was weird because these 2 kids had iron bladders. They never got up to use the bathroom. I heard some footsteps for a couple of moments and then it was quiet again. I figured maybe they kids just had to get up for a moment or two. Then, about 10 minutes after the footsteps stopped, I heard the noise of someone walking again. This time, it was coming down the steps. I noticed the young girl I was sitting for come into the room. She was rubbing her eyes and she ran up to me. She told me that some man had looked in her room from the hallway. I was only mildly concerned. I mean, as a babysitter, it was something that I would have to check out. But mainly, I thought that this was simply a little girl scared of shadows or has had a bad dream. I checked out the entire house, and of course there was no one in the house at all. However, even after I confirmed this, she was too scared to go back into her room and sleep by herself. So, I went ahead and let her curl up next to me on the couch and go to bed. About 10 minutes after I'd been done checking the house, I heard this loud and blood-curdling human scream coming from outside the house. The boy came running down the stairs shortly after. I had him sit on the couch with his sister while I went to check it out. I was scared as I went outside, but I had to make sure the kids were safe. I didn't think that I could call the police just because I heard one scream. I had the porch lights on, and I walked around to the side of the porch. While I was staring out into the trees, I once again heard a similar scream as the last one. It was coming from out in the trees on the left side of the house. I could feel the hair standing on the back of neck. I was debating whether or not I should check out further what was going on outside or go back in the house. However, while I was thinking about it, I heard another scream coming from the same area. That was enough. I ran in the house, and I told the son to call the police and then his parents. I told him I was going to check all the rooms and make sure the house was secured. I gave him a baseball bat and I grabbed a knife without letting the kids see it. The first room I checked was the parents' room and was horrified to find the window not only open, but the screen removed. I closed and locked the window before I heard a 4th scream. I did my best to secure the house. However, I didn't want to spend too much time away from the kids. I got back to the kids. They had called both their parents and the police. Both were on their way. We curled up on the couch until they arrived. We didn't hear any more screams. The police didn't find anyone, but I know the house was broken into. It could have been just a prank to scare us. If it was, it worked. I used to babysit for a family that had 2 boys, one 10 and one 12. They were a lot easier to care for than you hear boys those ages. They played a lot outside in the backyard. They even had a full treehouse that they spent a lot of time in. A lot of times when I was over there babysitting, they spent a lot of time just playing in the treehouse. There were even times when their parents would let them camp out in the treehouse. They had done it a few times when I had babysat for them, normally in the summer. In those instances, I only had to go and check up on them every so often. This took place during a pretty hot summer. The kids were all excited about sleeping out in the treehouse. Their mom had told me it would be all right. I just had to go check on them every house. I tended to always do this, including after they had gone to sleep. So I went back and forth several times. The boys were staying up late, reading comics and just being boys. When I went out to check them around 11 o'clock, they had finally fallen asleep. I turned off the light they had, and then went back to the house. On the way back, though, I paused for just a moment. There was a light on in the second story of the house. That wasn't that unusual on its own, but as I was walking back toward the house, I saw the light turn off. This wasn't just the case of my eyes playing tricks on me either. I mean, yeah, the light flipped off immediately after I got to the bottom of the tree, but I knew that I had seen it one. I wasn't sure what to do at first, but I took out my cell phone and called 911. After that, I climbed back up into the treehouse. I turned on the light quickly. I woke up the boys. I didn't tell them what I'd seen, but only that they would hear police sirens and not to worry about it. The police arrived, and I watched them from the treehouse as they went in. An officer also came over to the treehouse and indicated to us that it was okay to come down from the tree. I watched again as cops came out of the house with a man in cuffs. They had found him, hunkered down in the boys' room closet holding a knife. I don't know if he was waiting for them. I don't know if he was waiting for me. I don't know if he was just there to rob the place. But I'm glad I saw that light switch off. I don't know if this story will scare anyone or if they just think it will be weird. I mean, it definitely scared me when it happened. I was babysitting for a family who had a really beautiful but also very old mansion. The family room, where the television was, had an extremely beautiful fireplace as well. I often, in the winter, would sit in there by the fireplace and read a book. I really loved it, especially my family didn't have anything like that. This night had been going by as normally as any other. The parents were going to be out all night, which was really pretty normal for them. I put the kids to bed at 9 p.m., made sure there was some wood on the fire, and then I went back to reading my book. I had been reading for quite a while when I heard a noise. It sounded like a loud knocking noise, but it wasn't anyone knocking on the door. I went and checked on all the kids, and they were asleep in their beds. So I went back to my book. But immediately upon entering the family room, I heard the noise again. I decided I would listen, and if I heard a few more times, see if I could tell where it was coming from. I did hear it again, and then again. It was almost rhythmic, actually. I followed the sound, which seemed to be coming from the back of the house. I went through the servants' kitchen, which was a room that the family didn't really use anymore. They basically just used the door to go into the backyard. The noise was coming from outside in the side backyard outside that kitchen. I over to the door and felt around for the light switching. When I flipped on the light, I saw a figure standing far off in the side yard. The person had an axe in his hand. He took the axe, held it up and swung it down, making the noise that I heard. It looked like he was cutting a small log in half. Then he grabbed another log, put it up, and did the same thing. He seemed really oblivious to the fact that I had turned the light on. In fact, I didn't notice any sort of reaction. I had no idea what to do. For a few moments, I considered going out the door and checking to see if he was a neighbor, a relative, or just checking to see if he was all right. I didn't think that he might be dangerous, really. I mean, he had an axe, and if he was wanting to break into the house and do anything, he could have. I almost really opened that door, but caution stepped in, and I decided not to. I simply slunk back into the other room, quietly picked up the phone and called the police. I mean, at the very least, the man was trespassing. The story gets a bit stranger. The police came, and when they approached the man, he apparently swung at them with the axe. They were fortunately able to wrestle him to the ground without shooting him. The reason I found this fortunate was that the man was suffering from dementia. He lived only 5 houses down, and his son was taking care of him. He left the house while they were sleeping and thought he was living his teenage years again. So when he saw the axe and the chopping block, he just began cutting firewood. Now, again, I don't know how scary this story is, but the man had dementia, and he did take a swing at one of the cops with the axe. If I had gone out there like I had considered doing and he swung at me, I wouldn't have been able to defend myself. I would have been very injured or a whole lot worse. It seems like the two biggest sources for scary stories on YouTube seem to be pizza delivery and babysitting. Well, mine sort of doubles those. I was babysitting for a family that I had been doing this for several years. They always paid very well and gave me extra money for pizza for dinner. So a couple of hours after the parents left, and once the kids had done all of their homework, I went ahead and ordered the pizza. When the pizza guy arrived, it was a different guy than I had ever seen before. He was a bit awkward at first, not really seeming to acknowledge I was there, just giving me a really creepy look. After a moment, he looked over at the car and told me that he had gotten the wrong pizza. So he went over to the car, grabbed another pizza, and came to deliver it. He gave me the pizza. I paid him and he left. When I opened the pizza, I noticed that I actually had the wrong pizza. I assumed that the guy was just a new employee and had made a mistake. I called the pizza parlor, let them know, and they said they would send out a new pizza. About half an hour later, the kids were getting pretty hungry and frustrated. But finally, the pizza came. It was the same pizza guy. He apologized, and we exchanged pizzas. He was about to leave before I checked the pizza. But once again, it was the wrong pizza. I called the guy back, and he apologized. But now I was getting irritated. He went back, got another pizza, confirmed that it was the right pizza, and then he left. I was bugged by the guy, but was happy that I finally was able to get the kids fed. Halfway through eating the pizza, the doorbell rang. I checked on it, and it was the pizza guy. He told me that I had overpaid for the pizza, which I know that I hadn't. He gave me $10, and I just took it, and he left. He didn't come back for the rest of the night, which was great. I put the kids to bed and read until his parents came home. I got in my car to go home. About 2 hours later, there was a knock at the door. I was still awake because I was studying for a big test. When I answered it, it was the police. Someone had broken into the house I was babysitting for, claiming he was my boyfriend. I had to refute the story and identify who it was. I don't think it comes as any surprise to anyone reading this that it was the pizza guy. He didn't know I was the babysitter and assumed I lived in the house. He tried to get into it late at night and got caught, claiming, "I'm your daughter's boyfriend." Well, he obviously went to jail, and I have no doubt that he kept screwing up on purpose in order to keep coming back to the house. I am sorry that the family I babysitted for had to go through this, but I still watched over their children often. When I was younger, I had to babysit for my younger cousins. I grew up in a very rural environment, although a lot of my relatives were in even more rural conditions. I was one of the older cousins, so I tended to be drafted to babysit for others all the time. And of course, it wasn't a job really, as I didn't really get paid, nor did I get anything special out of it. I was pretty much just expected to do it. On this occasion, I was babysitting for my second cousins. There were 4 younger kids, and they lived on a farm. I actually liked this one, though. They had a beautiful and very big farmhouse. The doors had skeleton keyholes in them, which I always just thought was pretty cool. There was a huge basement and a huge attic full of all sorts of interesting things. The only time I didn't like babysitting there was when this story happened. My parents and my cousin's parents had gone out to the bars. Normally, this meant it was an all-night job. We played some games and watched a little bit of television. They didn't get much TV out there, being as far out as they were. The boys I was babysitting were 10 and 12, and they were definitely difficult to watch over. Also, being that they lived out in the country, they were used to being outside a lot. I didn't mind, really, and knew they wouldn't be in any danger. They may have gotten into trouble, but it would simply be of their own causing. They were out after dark, and when they came back, I noticed that one of them didn't have his shoes on. I asked him where they were, and he said he left them outside by the shed. I told him to go get them, but he refused, claiming he was scared. When I asked him why, he said he was scared of the boy hanging out in the corn. He told me the boy was trying to scare him, saying he was going to take him out into the cornfield. If you understood these boys, or any young boys, I guess, boys like to scare other people. And this boy, I knew, was trying to scare me. I also knew I would get chewed out, so I went out with a flashlight to get the shoes. It wasn't really dark yet, but the sun had mostly gone down. There was a shed right on the edge of the cornfield, and I knew that was the one the boy was talking about. So I went out there to look for the shoes. I could still see, but I knew my vision would be impaired. You know how it is, when everything is dark blue instead of black. I went to the shed and was looking around for the shoes. I got frustrated pretty quickly because I was unable to find them right away. While I was cursing, I shined the flashlight up and bit and saw something. It took a second for me to register it, but it was maybe a 13-year-old boy sitting behind the first row of corn. Well, he was more crouched down that sitting, his knees bent, and he was looking at me with a grin on his face. He was also holding the shoes. I fell back, but was able to collect myself and get up. I turned and I ran as quick as I could back to the house. I went in and locked all the doors. It is odd looking back on this story because I sometimes don't think it is as scary as it was. But then, I remember seeing that boy, shirtless, wearing cutoffs and crouched down, holding the pair of shoes in front of him and grinning at me. Yeah, it was pretty scary. Why anyone would be hanging out in the corn like that? I have no idea. I didn't get in trouble for the shoes. I retrieved them in the morning. My cousin told his parents what happened, but they didn't believe him or me. They thought the story was too weird.